Most people are taught that chickens are the only practical farm animal for small properties, but that's not how our ancestors built sustainable food systems. For generations, certain animals quietly provided better meat, richer eggs, and stronger income with less land, less feed, and less risk. That knowledge wasn't lost because it stopped working. It was buried when industrial farming took over. In this video, I'm uncovering 5 forgotten animals that still outperform chickens today, especially if you value self-sufficiency, healthy protein, or financial independence. If you believe farming is more than following trends, this channel is for you. I share hidden animal systems like this every week, and subscribing means you won't miss the knowledge most people never learn. Welcome to the Animal Lost Vault. Let's unlock it. Animal 1. Quail, the space-efficient protein producer. This animal matters because it solves a quiet survival problem most small-scale farmers face, producing year-round protein without acres of land or expensive infrastructure. Our ancestors understood this. Modern homesteading culture trained us to ignore it. The reason quail systems worked wasn't luck. It worked because it matched real life. Limited space, unpredictable seasons, and families who needed reliable food without massive investment. It didn't depend on large coops, constant supervision, or premium feed, and that's why it sustained communities for generations. Historically, all they needed was a small covered enclosure and basic grain access. No specialized equipment, no modern climate control. The practice was simple: maintain consistent feeding schedules and collect eggs daily. No maximizing production, no scaling operations, just consistency. To maintain it, they focused on one thing: natural breeding cycles. That alone kept the system productive year after year. Over time, this didn't just provide eggs and meat. It created stability. Reliable protein that chickens couldn't match in the same footprint. Less dependence on outside feed suppliers. And that's why families with tiny yards relied on quail instead of poultry. One detail most people miss is that quail reach maturity in 6 weeks compared to chickens' 20 weeks. You don't need that information to start, but it explains why traditional homesteaders prioritized speed over size. What makes quail particularly valuable today is their efficiency ratio. A single breeding pair occupies less than 1 square foot, yet produces over 200 eggs annually. The eggs themselves contain more protein per ounce than chicken eggs and command premium prices at farmers' markets. For families seeking healthy, sustainable food sources without large properties, quail represent what our ancestors knew. Productivity isn't about size, it's about design. The system requires minimal daily commitment. Morning feeding takes 5 minutes, egg collection another 5. There's no pasture rotation, no predator-proofing acres of land, no expensive fencing infrastructure. The birds thrive in stacked cages, making them ideal for vertical farming approaches that maximize limited space. This is precisely why apartment dwellers in urban areas historically raised quail on balconies and rooftops when protein was scarce. From an investment perspective, startup costs remain remarkably low. A functional quail operation begins with under $200 in materials. Compare that to chicken coops requiring thousands in construction and predator protection. The return on investment appears within weeks, not months. Breeding stock multiplies rapidly, creating additional income streams through fertile egg sales and live bird sales to other homesteaders seeking self-sufficient protein sources. The meat itself offers advantages beyond chickens. Quail meat contains higher protein density, lower fat content, and richer nutrient profiles. Restaurants pay premium prices for fresh quail, especially establishments focused on farm-to-table concepts and healthy dining experiences. This creates consistent demand that small-scale producers can fulfill without industrial-scale operations. One breeding flock of 25 birds can generate life-changing supplemental income for families willing to maintain simple, proven systems. What our ancestors never forgot: the best livestock isn't the most popular. It's the most practical for your specific situation. Quail proved practical then. They remain practical now. The only difference is modern culture convinced us to overlook them. This animal matters because it solves the quietest problem in sustainable farming, producing the highest quality meat per pound of feed without noise, smell, or neighbor complaints. Our ancestors understood this. Modern factory farming systems trained us to forget it. The reason rabbit systems worked wasn't technology. It worked because it matched real life, residential properties, limited budgets, and families who needed productive livestock without disturbing anyone. It didn't depend on slaughter facilities, expensive grain, or constant veterinary intervention, and that's why it sustained households for centuries. Historically, all they needed was basic hutch space and simple feeding routines. No specialized knowledge, no modern breeding programs. The practice was simple: provide consistent shelter and allow natural reproduction cycles. No forcing growth, no artificial timelines, just observation. To maintain it, they focused on one thing: keeping breeding healthy and stress-free. That alone kept the system productive across generations. Over time, this didn't just provide meat, it created independence, reliable protein that outperformed chickens in feed conversion, less financial dependence on grocery stores, and that's why Depression-era families survived on backyard rabbit systems when other food sources failed. One detail most people miss is that rabbits convert feed to meat at ratios chickens cannot match. You don't need that fact to start, but it explains why experienced homesteaders choose rabbits for serious meat production. What makes rabbits particularly valuable today is their scalability and silence. A small breeding trio occupies minimal space yet produces over 200 pounds of healthy meat annually. The meat itself ranks among the healthiest proteins available. Highest protein content, lowest cholesterol, easiest digestibility. For families concerned with heart health and sustainable nutrition, rabbits represent forgotten wisdom about quality over quantity. The system requires remarkably little infrastructure investment. Basic wooden hutches last decades with minimal maintenance. Feed costs remain low because rabbits thrive on hay, garden scraps, and foraged greens that most homesteaders already produce. There's no expensive grain dependency, no massive water consumption, no waste management crises. The manure itself becomes valuable garden fertilizer, creating closed-loop systems our ancestors practiced instinctively. From a financial perspective, rabbit breeding generates multiple income streams. Breeding stock sells year-round to new homesteaders. Meat rabbits command premium prices at farmers markets and direct-to-consumer sales. The pelts create additional revenue for crafters and tanners. Even the manure sells to organic gardeners seeking chemical-free fertilizer. This diversification protects families from single market dependency while building genuine self-sufficient income. The breeding cycle itself demonstrates remarkable productivity. Does produce multiple litters annually with minimal human intervention. Each litter reaches market weight in 8 to 12 weeks, creating continuous harvest opportunities throughout the year. This consistency allows families to plan meals, budget expenses, and generate reliable income without seasonal gaps that plague other livestock operations. What separates successful rabbit systems from failed attempts is understanding one principle. Rabbits need simplicity, not complexity. Overbuilt systems fail. Complicated breeding programs fail. What succeeds is exactly what worked historically. Basic shelter, consistent care, and respect for natural behaviors. The animals handle everything else themselves, just as they did when our great-grandparents relied on them for family food security during uncertain times. This animal matters because it solves a problem most small farmers don't even realize exists, producing richer eggs than chickens while simultaneously controlling pests and providing premium meat from a single low-maintenance system. Our ancestors understood this. Modern poultry culture trained us to see only chickens. The reason duck systems worked wasn't breeding innovations. It worked because it matched real life, wet climates, pest pressure, and families who needed multiple products from one animal. It didn't depend on perfect conditions, expensive feeds, or constant management, and that's why it sustained farms for generations. Historically, all they needed was water access and open foraging space. No specialized coops, no climate-controlled housing. The practice was simple: provide basic shelter and let natural foraging instincts guide daily nutrition. No measuring feed rations, no complicated schedules, just observation. To maintain it, they focused on one thing: protecting nesting areas during laying season. That alone kept the system productive year after year. Over time, this didn't just provide eggs and meat. It created balance. Natural pest control that eliminated insect problems without chemicals. Less dependence on outside inputs for garden health. And that's why traditional homesteads integrated ducks into garden systems rather than separating livestock from crops. One detail most people miss is that duck eggs contain more omega-3 fatty acids than chicken eggs and command premium prices. You don't need that information to start, but it explains why health-conscious consumers seek them specifically. What makes ducks particularly valuable today is their resilience and versatility. A small flock of 6 ducks produces more eggs annually than equivalent chickens while requiring less supplemental feed due to superior foraging abilities. The eggs themselves sell at farmers' markets for double the price of chicken eggs because customers recognize superior nutrition and richer flavor. For families seeking healthy, sustainable income from livestock, ducks represent practical wisdom our ancestors never forgot. The system requires minimal infrastructure beyond basic nighttime shelter. Ducks don't need nesting boxes, roosting bars, or complex coop designs. A simple 3-sided shelter protects from weather and predators. They prefer ground-level housing, eliminating expensive elevated structures. The birds spend daylight hours foraging through gardens and yards, consuming slugs, snails, beetles, and larvae that damage crops. This natural pest management saves money on organic pesticides while protecting family food supplies. From an investment perspective, ducks offer remarkable returns. Startup costs remain low because housing requirements are minimal. Feed expenses decrease significantly compared to chickens because ducks obtain substantial nutrition from foraging. They consume insects, weeds, and pond vegetation that homesteaders never need to purchase. The meat itself commands premium restaurant prices, especially breeds like Pekin and Muscovy that produce tender, flavorful harvests without gamey taste. The breeding cycle creates consistent productivity without intensive management. Ducks lay reliably for 3 to 5 years, far longer than commercial chicken breeds. They handle weather extremes better than chickens, continuing egg production during cold winters that stop chicken laying. This reliability matters for families depending on animal systems for genuine food security rather than hobby farming. What our ancestors understood instinctively: the best livestock serves multiple functions simultaneously. Ducks provide eggs, meat, pest control, and fertilizer from one animal. This efficiency reduces labor, cuts costs, and increases overall farm productivity. Modern homesteading forgot this integration principle when industrial agriculture convinced us to specialize. Traditional wisdom says diversification within single animals beats specialization across many. If this kind of forgotten animal knowledge matters to you, give the video a like. It helps others discover alternatives to conventional homesteading. Tell me in the comments, which animal surprised you most? Or had you heard of these systems before? I read every comment because this channel grows through shared wisdom. These animals worked for our ancestors and still work today for families seeking genuine self-sufficiency and financial independence. Animal 4. Geese, the guardian investment. This animal matters because it solves a hidden security problem that costs small farmers thousands annually, protecting property without expensive fencing, security systems, or guard dogs while simultaneously producing premium meat and fertile eggs. Our ancestors understood this. Modern farming culture trained us to overlook it. The reason geese systems worked wasn't training programs. It worked because it matched real life, unfenced properties, predator pressure, and families who needed multi-purpose livestock. It didn't depend on elaborate infrastructure, specialized diets, or constant supervision. And that's why it sustained farms across centuries. Historically, all they needed was open pasture and basic water access. No guard dog training, no electronic security. The practice was simple: establish territory boundaries and allow natural protective instincts to activate. No teaching behaviors, no reinforcement schedules, just respect for innate traits. To maintain it, they focused on one thing: consistent flock structure with established hierarchies. That alone kept the security system functional for decades. Over time, this didn't just provide protection, it created peace of mind. Reliable warning systems that alerted families to intruders, predators, and unusual activity without fail. Less financial dependence on expensive security infrastructure. And that's why remote homesteads relied on geese instead of technology when protecting livestock and property. One detail most people miss is that geese remain effective guardians for 15 to 20 years, far outlasting dogs. You don't need that fact to start, but it explains why experienced farmers choose geese for life-changing long-term security investments. What makes geese particularly valuable today is their dual-purpose productivity. A small flock of 4 geese provides year-round property protection while producing large, protein-rich eggs and premium meat that restaurants seek specifically. The birds themselves require minimal feed because they're exceptional grazers, obtaining most nutrition from pasture grasses that grow naturally. For families seeking self-sufficient security and sustainable protein, geese represent forgotten wisdom about efficiency. The system requires almost no infrastructure investment. Geese need simple shelter from extreme weather but spend most time patrolling property perimeters. There's no co-op construction, no predator-proof fencing for the geese themselves, no expensive feeding systems. They're naturally hardy, disease-resistant, and climate-adaptable, thriving in conditions that challenge chickens and ducks. The annual maintenance costs remain remarkably low compared to benefits provided. From a financial perspective, geese create unique income opportunities. Breeding pairs produce fertile eggs that sell to other homesteaders for premium prices, because establishing flocks takes years otherwise. The birds themselves command high market values as live guardians. Goose meat sells to specialty restaurants and ethnic markets for substantially more than chicken or duck. Even the down feathers generate income for bedding manufacturers and crafters seeking premium insulation material. The breeding cycle demonstrates impressive longevity and stability. Geese pair bond for life, eliminating constant restocking needs. They lay seasonally but produce large clutches of substantial eggs. Goslings reach market size within 4 to 6 months, creating predictable harvest schedules. Parents teach defensive behaviors to offspring naturally, maintaining flock security across generations without human training intervention. What separates successful geese systems from failed attempts is understanding one truth. Geese demand respect, not domination. They're intelligent, territorial, and protective by nature. Working with these instincts rather than against them creates harmonious, productive systems. Force and control fail. Partnership and boundaries succeed. This is exactly what our great-grandparents understood when geese protected their farms while modern security systems didn't exist. Animal 5. Pigeons. The forgotten urban livestock. This animal matters because it solves the most overlooked opportunity in small-scale farming, producing the fastest-growing meat bird in the smallest vertical space while generating premium-priced products that restaurants actively seek. Our ancestors understood this. Modern agriculture trained us to see pigeons as pests instead of productive livestock. The reason pigeon systems worked wasn't luck. It worked because it matched real life, urban properties, minimal space, and families who needed reliable protein without land-intensive operations. It didn't depend on slaughter age calculations, expensive feeds, or complicated management. And that's why it sustained city dwellers for generations. Historically, all they needed was elevated loft housing and self-feeding breeding pairs. No daily feeding schedules. No pasture requirements. The practice was simple. Establish breeding pairs and harvest squabs at optimal maturity. No growth manipulation. No intensive intervention. Just patience. To maintain it, they focused on one thing: keeping lofts clean and dry. That alone kept the system productive across decades. Over time, this didn't just provide meat. It created urban food security. Reliable protein production in spaces where chickens, ducks, and rabbits couldn't function effectively. Less dependence on rural supply chains. And that's why European cities sustained pigeon lofts on rooftops when ground space disappeared. One detail most people miss is that squab meat commands restaurant prices triple that of chicken. You don't need that information to start, but it explains why savvy urban farmers choose pigeons for profitable small-scale operations. What makes pigeons particularly valuable today is their space efficiency and automation. A breeding loft occupying 20 square feet produces over 100 squabs annually with minimal daily labor. The birds self-feed their young, eliminating hand-raising requirements that burden other poultry systems. For urban dwellers seeking sustainable, healthy protein without yards or acreage, pigeons represent ancestral wisdom about vertical farming before the term existed. The system requires surprisingly minimal infrastructure. Basic loft boxes mounted on walls or rooftops provide adequate housing. Pigeons naturally return home, eliminating fencing needs entirely. Feed costs remain low because breeding pairs consume minimal grain compared to production output. There's no extensive water systems, no climate control, no predator management beyond basic loft security. The birds handle reproduction, feeding, and raising entirely independently. From an investment perspective, pigeons offer remarkable profit margins. Startup costs for breeding stock and loft construction total under $300. Squab meat sells to fine dining establishments for premium prices because supply remains limited while demand grows among health-conscious diners seeking lean, flavorful protein. A single breeding pair produces 12 to 16 squabs annually, creating consistent income streams throughout the year without seasonal gaps. The breeding cycle itself demonstrates remarkable efficiency. Pairs produce eggs year-round in climate-controlled regions. Squabs reach harvest weight at 4 weeks, the fastest maturity rate among all domestic meat birds. Parents immediately begin new clutches after harvest, creating continuous production without rest periods. This consistency allows urban farmers to build reliable customer bases with restaurants and direct consumers seeking locally produced, sustainable meat. What our ancestors never forgot: the best livestock adapts to your constraints rather than requiring you to adapt to theirs. Pigeons thrive where chickens fail. They produce in spaces ducks can't access. They require less labor than rabbits demand. This adaptability made them indispensable when families needed protein security without ideal conditions. Traditional wisdom says productivity comes from matching animal nature to human limitations. Vault insight: why chickens became the default. Here's something rarely discussed in homesteading circles. Most small farmers struggle not because they lack skills or commitment. They struggle because they followed industrial marketing instead of ancestral wisdom. Chickens became the default farm animal not because they're the most productive, efficient, or profitable. They became default because commercial hatcheries scaled chicken production and convinced everyone that poultry means chickens exclusively. Our ancestors didn't think that way. They evaluated animals based on practical results: space requirements, feed costs, disease resistance, productivity timelines, and income potential. Chickens ranked average across most categories. They weren't exceptional at anything specific except being heavily marketed. What worked better depended on individual farm constraints and family goals. Quail produced more protein per square foot. Rabbits converted feed more efficiently. Ducks controlled pests while laying. Geese provided security while grazing. Pigeons thrived in impossible spaces. Each animal solved specific problems that chickens couldn't address. That's why traditional farms kept diverse livestock instead of specializing. Diversification wasn't trend following. It was risk management and practical productivity. The reason modern homesteaders rediscover these animals individually is because industrial agriculture buried integrated animal systems deliberately. Specialized production creates supply chain dependence. Dependence creates reliable customers. Our ancestors understood this instinctively and maintained independence through livestock diversity. They didn't reject chickens entirely. They just refused to depend on them exclusively. What makes this knowledge valuable today isn't nostalgia. It's proven effectiveness. These animals still outperform chickens in specific categories that matter to small-scale producers: space efficiency, feed conversion, income generation, and system resilience. The more natural the system, the more sustainable it becomes. Simplicity beats popularity every time in genuine, self-sufficient operations. That's not opinion. That's what worked for generations before modern agriculture convinced us otherwise. You don't need more animals. You need the right knowledge about which animals match your specific situation and goals. Pick one idea from today and research deeper. That's how forgotten systems come back to life in modern homesteads. Start with understanding what these animals actually require versus what conventional wisdom claims they need. If you want more hidden animal knowledge like this, subscribe to the Animal Lost Vault. This channel exists to preserve what worked before industrial systems buried practical wisdom. I share forgotten livestock systems, ancestral farming methods, and proven approaches that sustain families for generations. These aren't trends. They're tested systems that still produce results when implemented correctly. Thanks for opening the vault with me today. Remember, the best livestock isn't the most popular choice. It's the most practical solution for your land, budget, and goals. Our ancestors understood that instinctively. Now you do too. I'll see you in the next one.